I work from home, so my home office is where I spend most of my time, anywhere from doing work to recording YouTube videos to just relaxing. And since I spend so much time in my home office, I wanted to make sure that this room was smart and made my life easier. So I wanted to share with all of you everything I learned trying to make this home office studio space into my dream smart office. So let's get started. If you've seen my last smart home video, I talk in detail about how I approached making my entire home smart and some of the basics around smart homes in general. So if you're more interested in that topic, check it out here. But I use a ton of principles from that same video in this room. In this space, I have 3 desks. One where I record YouTube videos, which is a lot messier than everywhere else. One where I record a ton of my product shots for my YouTube videos, and one where I mainly work from. The goal of making this office space smart is to make using this space more efficient through smart home automations so that I don't have to worry about all that stuff when I'm super focused doing the things that I do. Basically, I want to make my life easier. When you're planning out a smart home office space, or really any smart space, you have to think of 3 different things. What do you want to make smart? Why you want to make it smart? And how are you going to make it smart? If you really think about it, most rooms are kind of the same. There's sources of light like windows, lamps, or overhead lights. Then there's temperature that you can control by opening the blinds or turning on the ceiling fan or controlling the thermostat. Then there's tech, things like audio systems, computers, whatever. Now, why do I want to control these different things? Well, let's talk about lighting first. I hate walking into a dark room, especially in an office space like this that has a bunch of light stands, tripods, and other filming equipment laid throughout the entire space. It's a safety hazard. There's just something so premium feeling about walking into a room and then the lights just automatically turn on when you enter it, like you're the main character of a movie or something. For temperature, I'd like to be able to control both my ceiling fan and thermostat so that I never have to worry about being too hot or too cold like I do during a YouTube video. Making these videos, you're always having these bright lights shining on you and it gets hot, trust me. But at the same time, if I had control over the temperature like this, it would kind of make that blanket over there kind of pointless. But that's just for the look, okay? It's for aesthetic reasons. As for my tech, I'd want these pieces to be able to interact with my smart home devices. All right, so now that I sorted out why I wanted these different aspects of the room to be smart, we can start figuring out how to make these different aspects smart. Now, this how question is a super loaded question because there's layers to this. The first part is to make the devices I want smart actually smart. Lights can be upgraded with smart light switches, smart plugs, or smart light bulbs. Ceiling fans can be controlled with a smart light switch, just like a light, and some ceiling fans actually come pre-built with smart home support. There are some smart blinds and even ways to convert your current blinds into smart ones. If you want even greater control over your temperature, thermostats can be replaced with the smart one as well. As for my tech, there are ways to make the tech around you smarter, like using a Google Chromecast or Apple TV for a monitor or TV that you have to give it smart TV capabilities. Or you can use smart plugs for dumb appliances. There's lots of ways to get creative and make things smarter. Once your devices are smart, you'll be able to control these devices in different ways, but you have to figure out what you want to be able to control them with, like a smart home voice assistant and their apps like Google, Alexa, or Apple Home. Maybe you'd like physical buttons you want to press, or maybe you want both, which is to me the best way. If you're tech savvy, trying to get everything to work under the same umbrella, don't mind tinkering, and enjoy spending thousands of hours automating seconds of your life, check out Home Assistant, a smart home solution that combines different devices that don't support the same smart home standards under a single umbrella that works with everything. But just be warned, once you get deep into the Home Assistant rabbit hole, it's hard to get out of. Otherwise, just pick devices with the most support. That's usually way less of a headache. But what's been really helpful in figuring out if my smart home devices are on and actually working is today's sponsor, Thing. Thing has both a mobile and desktop app that lets you scan your network to actually see what's on your Wi-Fi. You can monitor your network speed and check your security of your network. When you build a smart home, you get a lot of different devices that want to connect to your network and the internet. Using Thing on my desktop, I can monitor what devices are connected to my network, any issues that are on my network, when a new device is added to that network, and if a device is down or offline. Here you can see what type of devices are connected to my network and have nice descriptions assigned automatically by Thing for everything. I can see a ton of details about my network setup, get a pulse on the security health of my network, and even see unrecognized network connected cameras. Thing also has a ton of built-in tools on their desktop app to further delve into your network. There's a lot of cool tools here. I really like using Thing to keep track of all the different smart home devices that I have on my home network and let me see if something disconnected or failed because it's no longer active on that network. It's been a huge help, especially since you can see a 30-day history of all your connected devices. So if you're interested in Thing, check out the link down in the description below to check out their desktop app. There's a ton of good stuff in there, and thanks again to Fing for sponsoring this portion of the video. Okay, so once your devices are smart and you can control them, it doesn't necessarily mean that your space is smart yet. It just means you have greater control on how you turn your devices on and off. You also have to figure out how you want your smart home to get a pulse check on your room. Okay, I'm gonna give you a nice little analogy here. When you go for a run, your body heats up. You notice that it heats up because you feel it, but your body forces you to sweat to cool down. You don't necessarily control that, right? Imagine if you had to manually tell your body to force itself to sweat. That would be really annoying and very inconvenient. Smart homes are kind of the same way, except you get to control when these triggers happen. But at the same time, you need to know a pulse check. You need to understand what's happening in your space. Smart home automations are very similar. You can control when these triggers, when these automations come into play. But your space needs a way to understand that changes are happening in that space too. And we can get there by using sensors. Since the main things I'm focused about in this room is light and temperature, I have this single hue motion sensor. This sensor tracks motion, how much light is in a room, and the temperature that's in the space. But there are also sensors that can handle a lot more, like moisture, vibrations, CO2 levels, and quite a bit more. But for my own usage, having a sensor that tracks light, motion, and temperature in a space is kind of all I really need. All right, so now that we have a way to check what's going on in a room and get a pulse check, we need to automate reactions to changes similar to what your body does. So we can use the sensor to set up some really cool automations. Just for example, right, when the sensor reaches a certain temperature, I'd like the ceiling fan to just turn on automatically. Or if it gets too high in temperature, I'd like the smart thermostat to just turn on the AC for the entire house. When the room gets too dark and notices motion in the room, the lights turn on. You can set up these automations in your preferred smart home platform. I'm personally using Home Assistant, the platform that I mentioned earlier, because it's super robust. But just keep in mind that the level of automations that you get out of these smart home platforms are not as robust, but they're a lot easier to use and understand for the average everyday person. So if you're not super big into smart homes or don't want to tinker too much, I'd suggest starting there. All right, as I talk through this next part, you're gonna quickly notice that I kind of didn't follow my own advice of finding the most compatible products or maintaining consistency throughout this room, because those lessons were lessons that I learned after I started putting this space together. So throughout this next part, I'll try to make sure to give you advice or discussion on products that I wish I used instead of what I actually did, so that you don't make the exact same mistakes that I did. I replaced the two light switches in this room that controlled the light and the ceiling fan in this space. I used two different brands here, but if I were to redo this, I would just buy these Casa or Tapo light switches since they have support for all the different smart home platforms and even Matter. They look like regular light switches and they're not too pricey like something from their competitor, Lutron. From there, since the hue motion sensor is magnetic, I kind of just place it on top of my light switch where the screw is magnetically. All right, sometimes I do accidentally knock it over, but by placing it here, I don't have to screw it into the top corner of the ceiling somewhere, because taking it down to replace batteries would be super annoying. I don't particularly like using overhead lights, so I took old LifeXZ light strips that I had laying around and mounted them to each desk in this room to give them an ambient glow. If I were to redo this, I would use Govee light strips. They got some pretty good smart home compatibility, a bunch of different options, provide a ton of features, and are a really good cost-effective option. But beyond that, I do have some additional smart lighting like these Hue light bars and these nano leaf wood hexagon panels. This room had blinds pre-installed, and I just wasn't about to buy new blinds for this space that had smart capabilities. So I'm using the Sequara E1 blind driver. For some reason, these still aren't available in the US, so I had to buy these off an eBay seller that's out of the country. But if you don't have any blinds yet, I highly recommend checking out the IKEA Furter motorized blinds. I installed one of these for a friend and it works flawlessly in his smart home ecosystem. For my smart thermostat, I'm using the Ecobee Premium. It is a little bit more expensive than other smart thermostats, but that's because it supports all the major smart home brands. And so if I one day decide to switch what smart home platform I'm using, or I decide to move, it'll always be compatible with whatever future system wants to use it. I also have Sonos speakers in my office space as well as throughout the entire home that I can use by sending my music or audio from my computer, tablet, or phone directly to these speakers, or even move them to the rest of the Sonos speakers throughout the rest of the house. All right, so everything I just talked about is just smart home things. How is this used and integrated into my home office environment? Well, at my desk, I have a Stream Deck. They also have cool integrations with smart home apps and smart home ecosystems like Home Assistant. And if you're a Mac user who uses Apple Home, you can control all of your different Apple Home devices directly from your Mac. I like that I can control my smart home through the different buttons on the Stream Deck and have direct buttons that would pull up Apple Home to see the different statuses of my devices. It makes my home office also feel like a smart home command center. I can hit a switch to close the blinds, press a button to turn on the lights, control my music on Spotify that's connected to my Sonos speakers, whatever. The Stream Deck makes a great little smart home controller because you can set it to do multiple things at once too. Like I can make it turn off all the lights in the room and open the apps I need to start recording a YouTube video. I can even turn off automations that I don't want to accidentally trigger while I'm doing something specific. Having the flexibility to let the automations do their own thing, use my phone, my voice, or just press a button on my Stream Deck gives me a ton of flexibility on how to control all of the different smart devices in my home office. So what's my daily routine like then with this smart home setup? I enter the home office early in the morning. The lights then automatically turn on because it detected my presence and noticed the room was dark. I open the blinds using my voice, Stream Deck, or this little Pico remote. Once the blinds open, the lights turn off because there's a lot of natural light in this room now. If it's warm in the room, the ceiling fan will turn on during the day when it detects motion in the room. And then it'll turn off after 30 minutes if it no longer detects motion or the room gets colder. Then I go about doing what I need to do throughout my day. When the sun sets, the blinds will close on their own and the lights will turn on or off depending if someone is in the room. So far, it's worked out pretty well. But that doesn't mean all of this has been perfect, because it hasn't been perfect. You heard me way earlier in this video say, get devices with the most compatibility. And that helps a lot, because then you don't have to use something like Home Assistant and spend a lot of time tinkering things. I do enjoy tinkering with all of this, so I don't really care, but it would save me so much more time if I didn't have to tinker. But regular everyday people who just want to set something up and forget about it would not enjoy the tinkering process. And plus, the tinkerer is also the first person someone in your household will reach out to if anything goes wrong with the smart home. And trust me when I say this, it sucks being that person who has to fix the things. Number 2, make sure you have a good Wi-Fi connection throughout the entirety of your home, even the far reaches and far corners of the house. And just having a good Wi-Fi connection means your devices could be more responsive and always in range. My smart home office is in the furthest corner of my house, away from the Wi-Fi access point. So I do see random drops or things not working as expected because I'm like right at the edge of the range. I am working on upgrading my whole home networking setup though, but that's something I'll dig a little deeper on a whole different video. And lastly, if you're using motion sensors, do not confuse them with occupancy sensors. Motion sensors trigger when they detect motion. Occupancy sensors check to see if there's someone in the room. So if you're staying still, like say you're sitting at your desk, motion sensors could fail to pick you up, where occupancy sensors could pick you up. But there's a lot more motion sensors on sale, and they're also usually cheaper. But I've ran into situations in my own smart home office where I was pretty motionless for half an hour, and the ceiling fan turned off because I set my automation to say, if you don't detect motion for 30 minutes, turn off the ceiling fan. Then I had to wave my arms around to make sure that the ceiling fan turned back on. So just keep that sort of thing in mind. Anyway, that's my reasoning and how I set up my smart home office. It's obviously not perfect, and trust me, I'll be overhauling it in the future. But this is where I'm at right now. I made a lot of mistakes getting it to this point, but I like to think it worked out pretty well. Smart homes are a constant work in progress, so I can see myself making so many more updates to this space. So anyway, what do you think? Did I make the right choices? What am I missing? What would you do differently? Was anything I mentioned useful to you? Did I give you any inspiration for your own smart home office setup? Leave all that down in the comment section below, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.